Many of us are familiar with the term segregation, and when you hear that term, you might have images run through your mind, or black and white images of people at a lunch counter, or something happening during the civil rights movement. But what if I told you that segregation never really ended? What if I introduced you to a new term called economic segregation? I want to introduce you to a professor that's done a lot of work in this area, and hopefully he can help us unpack this concept of economic segregation. So I think many of us have a pretty decent understanding of what segregation is, right? And we might have pictures in our mind that we see people at a lunch counter and all the things that come along with that. But what is the definition of economic segregation?
Economic segregation you might think of as concentrations of wealth and the privileges that come from wealth, whether it's resources, power, political power, economic power, being concentrated and separated out from the broader population. We see it spatially in concentrations of wealth and services in certain neighborhoods or even certain cities, right? You have the suburbs that are known to be wealthy. And you see it sort of politically or socially with influence and prestige and power and the way those are concentrated among a certain strata of peoples.
In this series, we're talking about systems of inequity. So would you say that economic segregation is a system of inequity, or is it just happenstance? How do we get to this point?
Economic segregation is absolutely a system. It's a system that's been built up over centuries in the United States. It's inseparable from the broader story of different kinds of segregation in the United States, the history of wealth. In the United States, for example, North and South, wealth was concentrated and possible in ways that were simply fundamentally tied to chattel slavery and to the enslaving of a population that provided unpaid labor. So the United States has had, over generations, accumulations of wealth that are tied to these other kinds of inequality. That wealth is generational. It is, even as the country has become, at least in law, more equal, there have been unequal opportunities to gain economic power. Soldiers coming home after World War II. White soldiers were given disproportionately access to government-subsidized low-interest loans that allowed them to buy homes. Again, any personal finance person will tell you, building equity in a home is one of the most important things you can do to build wealth. That was fundamentally supported by the government. In the case of white Americans, white GIs, it was prohibited or actively discouraged in the case of black Americans. The distribution of wealth in the United States has never been simply an accident. It's never been simply a market, where you sort of set up the dominoes and everybody has equal opportunity and then what happens, happens. It's never been that way. Law sets the rules of the game. And whether they are actively segregationist laws, racially segregationist laws, or whether or not they're passive choices about what to fund, what not to fund, the government has played a tremendous role in the concentration of wealth, whether it's in the middle class, or as it's doing today, choosing to concentrate wealth in a very few powerful people.
We're here on a college campus. In fact, it's been a while since I've been in one of these chairs, and it makes me think about institutions that exist around us. Talk to me a little bit about how economic segregation has influenced or structured institutions, some that we know very well.
This university, like most universities across the country, can tell a similar story of the initial endowment that funded this university came from a slaveholder, came from a segregationist who made the endowment for the purpose of the university was to educate white boys and girls. You can look at the most prestigious universities in the country, whether it's Harvard or Yale, right? And you can see gifts given and resources given that, and buildings named after people who benefited from this historical pattern of segregation. The YMCA benefited from choices that were made in say the turn of the century into the 1950s and 60s. For example, when resistance to integration took root, cities made the choice to, rather than have public pools or have public gyms, public resources, to privatize those. And so they would donate them to institutions like the YMCA. The YMCA, a lot of, the chapters and the organizations around the country, maybe got a pool or a building out of this privatization, this choice that was made to resist integration for the sake of segregation. And that became the capital, whether it's the same building or not, whether it's the same pool or not, but that became the capital for the institutional structures that they have today. You have to pay for these pool memberships. You have to provide, these are public goods that are being provided through private resources. So there's an economic cost, right? How many people, even well-off people have had to decide, okay, what neighborhood am I gonna live in? Because I'm thinking about the schools and I'm thinking about, well, I wanna move, maybe I can't afford as much house in this one neighborhood, but the schools are better. And so I'm moving to this neighborhood because it's a better neighborhood and it has better schools. So there are economic costs, not to touch the third rail of insurance, right? But the loss of a sense of common good means that we have transformed ourselves into people who are dominated by fear.
So where do we go from here? We are one community. We have to function together. We benefit from supporting each other, from learning from each other, from moving in the same direction. Where do we go from here?
For the people watching this video, right, for the people who are doing this program, you've already taken a step, right? And to just listen to the histories, to just honestly confront the awkward, the uncomfortable reality of where we live. It turns out things like the churches we go to, right? The schools that we attend, the places that we love have these complicated histories. And that's okay, right? Denying it's not going to get us anywhere. We've got to start being honest with each other. We didn't just end up in a situation with massive inequality overnight. It's the result of choices. It's the result of institutions that are far more powerful than you or I. But the first thing I think we have to do is we have to stop pretending it didn't happen. Be willing to be uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good, right? To find out that my beloved alma mater has this racial legacy. It doesn't feel good, this why that I've given my life to, or that I've dedicated, so much energy to, or I've had so many great experiences to, has this history. And to accept that history is real. It doesn't mean that all those good things didn't happen. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have all these good characteristics. But the world is more complicated. People are more complicated. Institutions are more complicated than just good or bad. Find the people who are asking the questions that you think should be asked. Economic segregation is a theoretical segregation, but it is also physical segregation, right? Crossing those boundaries, crossing those tracks, crossing those highways, and physically coming together.
The cause of the Y is building and strengthening communities. And the mission of the YMCA has two words at the end that sums it all up. It's for all. And so everything we do is for all. All of these social determinants of social mobility, we're talking about it because we're building a community for all. I encourage you to step out of your comfort zone. I encourage you to step into a courageous space so that we can truly be a community for all. Next time, we're going to talk about family stability.